a leader of this team, how were you able to use the unexpected Mr. Blackborough, and how were you able to find and exemplify his talents?
Blackborough's. As I said before, Mr. Powell, I think that many times we discount the capabilities and competencies of the young because of their lack of experience. We do that in order to raise our own status and lower theirs, when the actual truth of the matter is that the young are far more capable than we give them credit for. Of course, I recognized Blackborough's capabilities almost instantly. Though I was terribly angry with him for stowing away, I was rather pleased at his adventurous spirit and his comfort with uncertainty. Once you attempt a journey like the one we were attempting, you must have a certain level of comfort with uncertainty. And so I used Mr. Blackborough as an example to all of the crew members. I held him up as an example of great management of risk, especially when he stowed away, how he applied himself once he was discovered, how he completely destroyed the old myth that we held of him of being an irresponsible person in order to stow away in the first place, and how he became a valuable member of the crew, a valuable leader of men at a mere age 18. So, I think that all of us, as we get older, Mr. Powell, I can see that you're still a very, very young man. But thank God no one laughed at that. I'm sorry. But I think as we get older, Mr. Powell, we become more and more comfortable with certainty. We want to know every morning that breakfast will be on the table. We want to know every morning that our paths will be clear to our place of business. We want to know every morning that our horse will get us there, or our motor car, if you are inclined towards the automobiles of today. We want to know that that certainty will be in place every day. For the young, not so much. They're comfortable with uncertainty. They're very comfortable with risk, managing risk. So I think that we, as members of the certainty style of leadership, can certainly learn from the young and those comfortable with uncertainty, as we all did from Pierce Blackborough. Did I approve of his stowing away? No. Did I approve of the spirit that caused him to stow away? Absolutely. Absolutely. Have I answered your second question to the satisfaction of your universe, Mr. Powell?
Yeah. If I might, Sir Ernest?
Yes, Mr. McCarthy, by all means.
From the perspective of the crew, I think in terms of Mr. Powell's question, there are a couple of points that probably should be made as well that Sir Ernest wouldn't tell you because of his modesty. One of the characteristics that Sir Ernest always displayed that caused many of us, all of us actually, to look up to him as a leader was the effort that he clearly put forth to learn each of us, to learn our skills, to learn our capabilities, and to play to those, work to those, so that we were capable and had the opportunity to give the best of what we had. That was very evident in his getting acquainted with Mr. Blackburn, but it was certainly something that he applied to each and every one of us, and I think it's one of the characteristics that made him a great leader. Okay? The other thing I think that's important to understand, and this was not lost on the crew either, the rest of us had been selected by Sir Ernest. We were a crew that he had selected. But many times, leaders do not have the opportunity to select their subordinates. They wind up with subordinates or people on their team that they didn't pick. And what Sir Ernest showed us was just because you didn't pick someone for your team is no reason to reject them. You accept them, you learn their capabilities, you play to their strengths, and you make them, you encourage them, you foster in them the desire to be a contributing member of the team. And those are the things that, from our perspective, made Sir Ernest a great leader. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Mr. McCarthy.
Other questions for Sir Ernest at this point? Yes, ma'am.
Your name, madam, and your publication.
Christine Hannes, publication Back to Nonprofits Tribune.
Paper that I read every day. Yes, Ms. Hannes, what is your question?
I love the idea of practice optimism.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm wondering if you can tell us exactly what you did to practice optimism.
We did. Thank you, Ms. Hannes. It's an excellent question. We did many things, but more than anything else, we asked the men to focus on those rewards that awaited them once they returned home. And one of the things that we asked them to focus on every day was the food that they would choose on arriving home. You must understand that in the final year of our entrapment in the ice, our diet was absolutely regular daily. It was either seal or penguin. Sometimes penguin and seal. So the routine diet was sometimes maddening for the men. So we would ask a particular man every single day, what is your name, sir?
My name is Dennis.
Dennis, please have a seat. Thank you for standing. We would say, Dennis, when you return to civilization, when you return to London, in that same south bank of the Thames, we'd say, Dennis, if we arrive in the morning, what foods will you ask for to enjoy for that very first meal back? Dennis, can you imagine what you would ask for if you arrived in the morning, what you would want to have to eat? Some of the men would say, well, we would ask every single man every day to take over, and they would have to describe those foodstuffs in absolute minuscule detail. So if it was kippers, they would have to describe the kippers down to the minutest detail. If it was eggs or porridge, no matter what that food item was. And many of the men were not concerned about what time of day they arrived. They had a meal in their mind, and they could describe it down to the very last detail, and they would also describe how to prepare it. So we would create a sense of anticipation of returning home. We would also ask the men to describe their wives, or their sweethearts, or their children, or members of their family in absolute minute detail. We would ask them to describe the idiosyncrasies of each members of their family down to the minutest detail, so that all of us became absolutely versed by the end of the journey of what Dennis's foods were, who his family were. And we would remind them every day. If Dennis ever came into a moment of despair or anger and anguish, we would say, Dennis, kippers. Or Dennis, your lovely wife. Are you married, Dennis?
Yes, I'm married with 3 children.
Married and 3 children. What is your lovely wife's name?
Bessie.
We would say, Dennis, Bessie. And anger and anguish and despair would disappear, because we had practiced and rehearsed that moment when Dennis would arrive and greet that person that shared his soul, and those 3 children who were dependent upon him, and the sharing and caring that he and Bessie have created together. Those are great moments, not only of optimism, Ms. Hannes, but also of bonding and acknowledgement of each other, what's important to each other. And we would also ask Dennis what things he feared the most, so that we understood his fears as well as his. People would do far more to avoid pain than they will to gain pleasure. So it was important that we understood about Dennis what his fears were as well. Does that answer your question to the satisfaction of your universe, Ms. Hammes? Thank you for asking. Mr. McCarthy.
Ms. Hammes, it should also be pointed out that this wasn't something that simply Sir Ernest did. You know, it became part of our way of life. In fact, when Sir Ernest and the other 4 of us left for South Georgia, when we took the James Caird, Frank White was in charge of the 22 remaining. And he practiced the optimism with them on a daily basis as well. Every morning they would wake up, and White would say to them, right boys, lash and stir. The boss is coming back today. So they would completely break down the camp, prepare for the ship to arrive, to pick them up and take them back to civilization. If it wasn't the day, then they would set up camp again and prepare for the next morning. And they would do the same thing every day. It was that active optimism that today is the day that rescue comes, we're going to be ready for it, and that's where we are. And if it didn't happen, right, we have another plan. And we keep moving forward. So it became a way of life. And when it does, things tend to go a little more smoothly.
And as it turns out, Mr. McCarthy will tell you, Ms. Hammes, that as it turns out, when we were finally able to break through the ice with the Chilean ship, the Elcho, to rescue the men, we had only a 2-hour window of opportunity to get through the ice, rescue the men, before that ice would close up and prevent us from achieving the island. So because they lashed and stowed every day, once we arrived, we were able to say, right boys, into the boat, onto the Elcho. They were ready, absolutely prepared. So, as you can see, Mr. McCarthy's point is well taken. Not only were they optimistically prepared mentally, psychologically, and emotionally, but also physically prepared as well. Critical whenever you are facing adversity on any level. Thank you for your question. Excellent. Thank you, Mr. McCarthy.